It's time to dive into professional portfolios. We're going to answer the question, why should you create a portfolio? I'm going to walk you through what to include and then talk about how you're going to get started on your professional portfolio. And I'm going to touch upon the assignment. This is worth 20% of your final mark. So first of all, what is a professional portfolio? It's an organized collection of relevant and personal documents that we call artifacts. It is evidence of both your skills and your achievements, so everything you've done up to this point that's relevant for your future career. It is much more comprehensive than a resume. It is, in fact, a website that documents things by using these artifacts to demonstrate that you have proof in a variety of different areas. So the professional portfolio provides concrete proof artifacts and also these reflective statements that help the user take a look and see how you got here and where you're going. And that's how your personality starts to shine through in your professional portfolio. So who uses a professional portfolio today? Well, here's the thing. Professional portfolios originally started way back in the 1970s, and they were used by people like architects and designers. If you can visualize those big black portfolio suitcases, they used to take their portfolios with them to a job interview to actually show their drawings and their designs. Then back in the 1980s, portfolios started to morph, change, and develop, and be used by different professions, such as teachers, for example. When you were applying for a teaching job, you were asked to bring your professional portfolio with you. So bring examples of lesson plans, rubrics, assignments, to demonstrate that you understood what was involved in teaching a class. By the 90s and 2000s, professional portfolios are now universally used by everyone. We ask you to bring these with you on your first interview. Or, even better, when applying for a job, you provide the link to your online portfolio. This has certainly become an accepted and requested tool for all industries, and it definitely sets you apart as both a serious and a worthy candidate. Imagine you're applying for a job and you go for the interview. As they begin to ask you questions, you're able to show them your portfolio, either by bringing it up on a screen or laptop or tablet, or maybe they've already looked at it. So it gives them a window into you, into your personality, into your skills and experience, and opens the door for a whole new line of questioning. Imagine you don't have a portfolio and you're up against someone who does. Now, who is seen as the more serious and worthy candidate? The one with a portfolio, obviously. So what does it say about you? Well, here's the thing. Rather than only hearing about your success through questions and answers in an interview, a portfolio actually shows the employer what you have done. It provides examples of your best work, and it really is your professional life story. It demonstrates your skills, your experience, and your personality through this professional story. So where to start? This is probably the hardest part, is to think about what is included in a portfolio. So think about all of your education and experience to date as kind of pieces as a puzzle. You have spent years completing a diverse task and groups of work, different pieces or artifacts. For instance, you've performed research, you've written papers, you've participated in group work, you've written extensive reports, you've learned software packages like Excel and SAP, and you've earned grades. These are all potential artifacts that might be included in your portfolio. They're pieces of the puzzle. You've also spent years gathering more personal puzzle pieces. For instance, if you've been involved in any sports, if you've got photographs of you accepting awards or achieving something great, other accomplishments that you've done, you may also include inspiring quotations, things like journal writing, club membership, hobbies, and awards. Again, these can be potential pieces So the collection process, collecting your artifacts, begins with you starting to catalog each piece of the puzzle and deciding what and how to use it in your portfolio. So what to include? There's two components in every well-written portfolio. There are the artifacts. Those are those proof pieces. But secondly, the other thing you need to include are something called reflection statements. These reflection statements provide context. Think of a great portfolio as a website that you're going through, and for each one of these proof artifacts, there's a little caption or a paragraph next to it to demonstrate what it's all about. Almost like a great photo album, a traditional photo album. If someone were to hand you a photo album and you see pictures along with a few captions to let you know who's in the photo, when it was, what was happening, and why it's important, then you don't even have to ask the author or the photographer about why these photos are included. It's all evident. That's what a reflection statement does for a great portfolio. It gives some context to the documents that are included. So what concrete or proof artifacts begin to tell your story? Well, obviously your resume is definitely a proof artifact. It's a summary of what you've done. But you may have some letters of reference from former employers or coaches or professors. These could be included as proof artifacts. If you've ever had an employee evaluation or a performance review and it was favorable, then I would include that. Lots of certificates from professional development, things like your LinkedIn Learning certificates or seminars that you may have attended. For volunteer activity, you would include some information and some artifacts around this. Perhaps you don't have a document that talks about your volunteer activity, but you have a picture of you participating in something. That picture could become a proof artifact. If you feel comfortable, you could include a copy of your transcripts as a proof artifact to demonstrate your knowledge and ability in courses. Of course, copies of diplomas and degrees, and definitely any awards or recognition for achievements. Again, if you don't have a physical award, you could include a picture of you receiving the award, or even a picture of the award with a reflection statement next to it. Some other things that you've probably have, some samples of your writing or something you've designed, something to showcase possible technical items or skills that you have. If you have some specific industry technical samples, again, some hints here. SAP and Excel are amazing to be included in a portfolio. Group project examples, any other photos or videos, examples of projects that talk about your soft skills like teamwork, time management, and leadership. Some hints here would be if you've taken part in any group sports. And of course, your course learning outcomes and program learning outcomes can be included and possibly summarized in your portfolio to demonstrate the skills that you have. What reflective artifacts do you include? So I've mentioned that reflective artifacts are kind of like the captions that go with your proof artifacts. But here's a few things to think about. Are there hints or elements of your elevator speech that should be included? Employers love to see a statement of your overall goals. So both your current career goals, any future education that you see, any professional development that you need to reach your goals. Do you have a work philosophy or statement that you live by? Quotes that relate to your work or personal philosophy? And definitely as a companion to your artifacts and sections, any reflective pieces about how things have contributed to your career journey. So things like what inspires you and why you've included the artifact. Your reflective statements explain why you have chosen each section or piece in your portfolio. So what it says about you and why it's important. And that's why these reflective statements are critical. Again, think of them as the captions to a great photo album. I want to caution you here. What is a professional portfolio? Well, certainly it is professional and there are some personal elements, and the artifacts need the story that goes with them. It is documented in a website, and we're going to walk through in just a second some different options that you have with regard to creating a portfolio and what platform you can use. What it is not Word documents scanned and emailed without any context to a future employer. So it is a virtual online website. It is not just a bunch of documents that are scanned and emailed. The format is electronic. It's a website with pages for each section. It has to be well organized and professional and flow logically with artifacts and reflection statements for each section and or important artifacts included or highlighted. I'm going to show you some examples, and once you take a look at the examples this week, this will probably make a little more sense to you. But it has to flow well. It has to make perfect sense to the person who's looking at it. There are a variety of different platforms you can use for your electronic portfolio. Google Sites, for instance, are great for creating a private site because you can invite others to view it, and they're quite easy to set up and navigate. There's also a platform called Weebly, which is a simple drag and drop interface. Adobe has a what you see is what you get with standard templates. And LinkedIn Learning actually has a whole course on how to create an Adobe electronic portfolio. And I'm going to include the link for that for you. There's a tool called WordPress. If you've ever created a website from scratch, this is sort of a blog-based tool and it's highly customizable. And then one that I see many students use is something called Wix. This is a Flash-based tool, and again, it's very similar to Weebly and the simple drag and drop interface, but it allows you to have some animated menus, and it starts with some rich templates that you can embed different types of media. If you're starting to feel a bit overwhelmed, that you've never created a website before and you're not sure how to do this, don't despair. What I would suggest you do is literally set a timer for yourself. Think back to the Pomodoro that we started with at the start of the course. Set a timer for yourself and dive into one of these for about 10 or 15 minutes. If after 15 minutes on one of these sites, like Wix for example, you haven't been able to figure out how to upload a photo, how to add a caption or reflection statement, then move on. And then dive into another one. Don't spend hours trying to navigate through one site and get frustrated. They're all very easy, they're all free, but everyone has a different technical skill level. So some of these, what might be easy to me, might be harder to someone else, and vice versa. For the portfolio assignment, you're going to be doing this in two parts. For the first part, you're going to be providing a minimum of 3 artifacts and a minimum of 2 reflection statements about these artifacts, as well as the overall framework or skeleton. And as a note here, you may not include your resume as one of the 5 artifacts for part 1. This basically demonstrates to me that you're off to a good start, that you've got sections and placeholders that demonstrate what will be included in the final version. And I'm going to encourage you here to include much more than the minimum of 3 artifacts and 2 reflection statements. The more you include, the more feedback I'll be able to give you. So for instance, if you have your full skeleton and you have 10 artifacts in there with a lot of different reflection statements, I know you're well on your way to the final version, and I can give you much more feedback about other things that you may want to think about including. For the final, which is worth 15%, I'm looking for a full and final professional portfolio with all of your artifacts and reflection statements. This must contain a minimum of 12 different artifacts and a minimum of 6 reflection statements. It has to be well-rounded. It has to demonstrate both soft and hard skills and be both creative and yet very professional. I introduced this topic fairly early in the course so that you have some time. This takes time to do. A portfolio cannot be put together the night before it's due. I guarantee you that's a recipe for disaster. The first thing you need to do is decide on what platform you want to use. So will you use a Google site, Wix, Weebly, etc.? The second thing is then begin collecting your artifacts. And this takes time. You have to really think through and brainstorm, what artifacts do I have? What do I need to think about collecting? And then the third thing is decide on your theme and how you're going to lay out your items for ease of use and design. This week I've included lots of examples of student portfolios with their permission. I ask that you take a look at some of these, and this will give you some ideas of how you can design your own fantastic portfolio. If you need some help, as I mentioned, in LinkedIn Learning, there's a whole course on building a portfolio with Adobe. If you feel comfortable with Adobe, then what you see is what you get, called Building an Online Portfolio. It's about 52 minutes in length if you look at all of the segments. Good luck!